Hi, welcome to Crosspoint Community Church. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Nathaniel, and this is what we got for you this week.
One of the things unique about Crosspoint is our development. Everybody at Crosspoint can be a leader, and everyone can make an impact. And everyone has the role of leading people to their full potential. You can always ask yourself, who am I developing?
If you were wondering what those boxes were when you walked in, back there, that's STOMP. Stands for Tithes, Offerings, and Missions. And this is how we take offering here at Crosspoint. In the Bible, it says we'll find strength and encouragement by telling all the stories of what God has done in our lives. And so, we want to hear some of your stories of how the church or how God has affected your life.
Simply send your story to emailcrosspoint@gmail.com with the subject title Amen. We'll use these stories to see how God is working through the church. And we love to show these stories to our volunteers and to show them what a difference they're making.
Students, tonight's student takeover. Come on out at 6 o'clock, or you can come on out at 5:30 for some pizza and some hangout time as we start our new series, My World versus the World. See which world you're really living in.
Today is the kickoff to our new series, Photoshop My Life. This is a 4-part series, and today we begin with Part 1, The Horrific World of Photoshop.
Well, that's all we got in the news of this week. If you have any questions, you can stop out at our welcome table, or you can check out our website, crosspointonline.net, or you can check out our cool app. And now to wrap things up, I'm going to take this daring ride down this slide. Whee!
This series with a display of my personal Photoshop, which is pretty self-explanatory. Over the years I've taken a lot of photos and I'm going to sell them to you. It's a Photoshop. And let's go ahead and get started. You guys feel free to bid or throw out some offers. I'm open to anything. Let's see what we got here. This first picture, if you don't recognize this fellow, that is Austin Berry. Appears to be a 5-year-old maybe. This is our spiritual leader in the church, Pastor Kevin Jack. No bids or offers. Okay. This one's usually a big seller. Here we go. This right here you might not recognize is Mr. Mike Coleman. And in case any of you were wondering, he does obviously have a degree of some sort. We're still not sure what it is. Let's go ahead and go to the next picture. Here is Kelly Ferris, leading his Zumba team, it looks like. He's pretty involved in that, from what I hear.
Wait, hold on. Nate, what are you doing?
Listen, I'm doing my Photoshop, which is where I take the photos I've been taking over the years and I sell them.
That's, awesome, right? Yes!
Let me show you some more that I have here.
Show me more.
Right here.
What?
I'm not sure who that fellow is. This is Crosspoint's own Andrew Schultz. Many of you are not aware that Schultz is a convert of the Jewish faith. You want to throw out a number?
I do want to buy this photo. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Well, I have Kevin's phone. He gave it to me.
You know, that'll work, man.
Okay, that's mine now. Okay, so I just claim that after church?
Yeah, you'll get it. We'll print it off, and let's go ahead and take a look at the next photo, see if you want any more. This one is a very expensive piece. It is a signed Clayton tennis card.
It's very important that he signed it.
Yeah, and
So people know that it was his card.
yeah, exactly.
And the value goes up.
You might not want to throw out a number on this because I don't think you can afford it. Let's go see what the next one is. All right. This one's pretty good. It's a big seller. I'm not gonna lie. Did you want?
I do.
Don't make an offer on this.
I'm not going to make an offer on this, but I want it.
record.
Oh, okay. All right. What is going on for real?
I'm selling my photos.
Dude. It's not a photo shopping experience, all right? It's Photoshop. Photoshop is a computer program. Smart college guy like you ought to know that. I'm going to relieve you of your duties, okay? All right. Great job. Hey, we're not selling photos today, folks. But our new series is Photoshop. And I'm not going to get all into that. I'll let Kevin talk to you about that. Introduce myself. My name's Brian Payne, and I'm the small group director here at Crosspoint Community Church. And I lost my voice overnight because I was yelling at the greatest football game in Kentucky. And not only am I small group director, I'm a Western Kentucky alumni. And there was a little game last night. Luke Malone, where's Luke? Luke was commenting to me about how great of an experience that would have been if he were there sitting beside me in the section of all blue, where I yelled continuously. And my wife would go, shh. Look, you're in red too. Do you not think they know this? All right, anyway, hey, listen, we're glad you're here. And if this is your first time visiting with us here at Crosspoint, if you'd like to know more about Western Kentucky. Sorry. If you'd like to know more about Crosspoint, we have a welcome table out front that you can stop at and pick up a free gift that we'd like to share with you, and just get a little more information about our church. Also, when you leave today, and if you parked across the road, across 68, what I'm going to ask is driver only of the vehicle. If you would, go get the vehicle and bring it up here. That way we can eliminate a massive amount of people walking across 68 and hopefully avoid injury. All right? Hey, great to see you today. Stand up, turn around, give somebody a high five, and say, "Go Tops."
So, first of all, before we get started, I could use some. The lights. No. Thanks, guys. I wish I would have said native if I could do that. Sorry. I need to make a note. I could use some Photoshop this morning. His shirt was washed. Maddie ate a chocolate donuts. And she gave me that. I'm okay. So today, if you are unfamiliar with Photoshop, I want to get right started on it. Photoshop is actually a photo editing software. It is not a shop where you sell photos. And if you've never seen Photoshop in action, I'm sure you've seen some effects on it for anyone who's been on the internet. I want to share with you real quickly some of my personal favorite Photoshop photos. I did not do any of these. I just found these online. So now kill those. I don't know if that's more creepy or cool, but it's here. Let me sit so I'm not blocking anyone. That excites me. This next one. This is me being stupid. The first time I saw that, I was like, how did he do that? Buying dolphins? Oh, that's right. This one's cool. Okay, and I like this one. And then this next door is some of my other favorites. It's not a real elephant. That's the thing. And then Tortoise Escape is the last one that I got. With my favorite. Now, so those are some of the neater ones. You can obviously see them working on the gun. Photoshop often has mishaps, and you may see them here or there. I want to show you some of my favorite Photoshop mishaps. The first one's Jessica Simpson. I don't know how ugly that guy was that had his arm around her, but he was not pretty enough for anything other than his hand to be in the picture. This other one, it may take you just a second. This one, I feel really bad for this poor girl in the future with only 4 fingers. And then this next one creeps me out. I don't know why they put his leg on her body, but I feel bad for her. This next one is by far my mishap story ever. This is a picture of officials, government officials from the Philippines after a hurricane hit their area of them, like in the wreckage, surveying the damage, stuff like that. And if you look at the photo very closely, like that guy looks good, that guy, oh, that's well done with this. But this guy is floating on the rocks. Like, he is not standing there. You can tell from how his feet are that he is not standing on the rocks. And so people took it out and, like, analyzed it and stuff like that and said, oh, they've been photoshopped. Like, they took this picture elsewhere, they used a lasso tool, pulled him into this photo, and put him in the hurricane damage. And so they actually, like, issued a statement of release of, like, we apologize for doing this, admitted that they didn't actually go down, that they just photoshopped the picture. And then, so what happened was some people started taking the same photo and putting them in different places. And when I saw these pictures, my response was just, I love people. I love the people who do this. So here's some of them. This is our guy. The next one. And my personal favorite. Okay, you can bring the lights back up. I've got no other thing. All right, so this is Photoshop. This is going to be our definition for the series of what Photoshop is. Photoshop changes the way we're seen by hiding our faults, blemishes, and imperfections. Keyword there is it changes the way that we're seen. It does not change who we actually are. It changes how other people view us. And so I was starting, about a year ago, I was starting to learn Photoshop and some other different photo editing software, not for any real purpose whatsoever, just to do goofy things and put myself like on the moon and stuff like that. I thought that was fun. And the interesting thing is that to make Photoshop work, there's all these different tools that are part of the program. And you select a different tool and it lets you do different things with the photo. And what intrigued me is how similar the tools were to different things that we do in our own lives. How the same tools for Photoshop that you can use to edit photos parallel how we live our lives and how we make other people think that we're different than we actually are. I want to show you 4 of those real quick. And the icons are going to be a little blurry because they're small. I had to blow them up. The first one is the spot healing brush. In Photoshop, there's a tool called the spot healing brush. And what the spot healing brush is, if you have like a blemish or a zit or a scratch or a scar or something, you can simply take the spot healing brush, gloss over the area, and it will take the pixels from around that area and use those same pixels to cover it up. So any small blemish or anything like that, you can just take it over and it looks fine. It looks normal. And I thought, how often have I heard people do that? They have different issues with their life or things that they've struggled with. And whenever anyone asks them how they are, their response is simple. I'm fine. I mean, I've seen families go through really bad situations. I've seen people go through breakups. I've seen other hard things come up in people's lives. And you ask them, like, not just like passing through saying, hey, how you doing? Which is the equivalent of the what's up. But I'm like, you're serious. Like, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. And I think people actually believe that. I think they believe that if I say I'm fine, if I tell everyone I'm good, then I won't have to deal with these issues and I can just move on, and that's fine. The next one that I saw that we use is called the blur tool. How the blur tool works is that if you have a part of the image that you really want to come into focus and you want people to kind of catch their attention, you can take the blur tool and you can make the other parts blurry, out of focus. And I see people do that same thing all the time. Then we'll have maybe say an area of our lives that isn't going well, and so we're just not going to focus on that. And instead of giving it the attention that it needs, we're just not going to talk about it, and we'll focus on the things that maybe are going better. And so what happens is, if we're having trouble in our marriage, we'll just talk about our kids. Or if we're having trouble with our kids, we'll talk about work. Or if work's not going well, we'll talk about sports or movies or something like that. And what ends up happening in the end is the vast majority of conversations that we have are about things that don't matter. Not because we don't know how to talk about the things that matter. It's simply the fact that, you know what, if we do, we're going to have to face difficult things that we don't want to bring into focus. We use the blur tool all the time. Third one I want to show you is the selection tool. The selection tool works if you have an area of the photo that you want to make edits to, but you don't want to make edits to the whole thing. You can simply use the selection tool and then manipulate that part of the image. And we make decisions on different areas of our life, not thinking that it's going to affect the rest of our lives. I've seen people make decisions of, I'm going to work really hard in my job and put forth all these extra hours, not thinking about how it's going to negatively affect their family and key relationships. And then months later, they look up and their family's in disarray and they go, how did this happen? Or if I could give you another one that might hit a little too close to home. We neglect our health. And we think that's isolated. And we don't think about how that's going to affect all the people that we care about. And so we use the select tool and we go, I'm just going to deal with this and assume it's not going to touch anything else. And the last one I want to show you is one that you're probably familiar with, is the crop tool. The crop tool simply allows you to take parts of the photo, to shrink it, or to cut out different pieces. And I see us use the crop tool more than anything else. We cut out people or events or things that we don't want to think about or talk about, and we assume if it's out of the picture, it can't affect us. Now, some of this is fun. I'll share with you a funny story of crop tool before there was an actual crop tool. Years ago, we were at my grandparents' house, and we're flipping through photos, and a number of years ago, my cousin went through a real messy divorce. And if I could just be clear, as a unbiased third party, it was all her fault. Because my cousin is an awesome guy, and he is great. And so they had this real messy divorce, and my family was really upset about it, and they should be really upset about it. And so I'm flipping through the photo album, and I get to a photo of my cousin, and my cousin is standing in the picture like this. And it just cut out. And I was like, Grandma, can we just like take the whole photo out? Like, do we need to remember that we have actually cut her out of the photo? And that's a lot more deliberate, but we do that, right? And when we go through stuff and we just kind of cut things out and we go, if I don't talk to them, if I don't think about them, if I don't think about this that happened, then it's not affecting me because it's not in the photo and I don't have to worry about it. And so we do this. We Photoshop how we're seeing. We Photoshop our images, but in very much the same way, we Photoshop our life. And this is what I want to talk to you about for the next 4 weeks. I want to talk about our tendency to edit our life. Now, I don't mean this, and I want to be clear on this, because I want you to think this throughout any of the series. I'm not talking about our tendency to take the difficult parts of our life and try to improve. I'm not talking about the tendency we have, and the good tendency to modify ourselves in a way for the better. Like, if you're a jerk, not being so much of a jerk, if we could talk about it like that. Okay, I'm not talking about that. That's possible. I want to talk about the tendency that we have to portray ourselves as much better than we actually are. Not changing who we are, but our tendency and focus on changing how we're seen by everyone else. And I mean, you can see this in simple, easy ways. Like somebody talk about high school. What'd you get on your ACT when you were in high school? 25. Ish. Ish. How's there an ish in scores? Is somebody, oh, so you played sports in high school? You played basketball? Oh yeah. 8th grade. Yeah, that counts, right? Or my favorite. So when I was in high school, I was on homecoming court. Were you? Oh, I was homecoming court. Sat next to her in homeroom. And the funny thing is that as we get older, I think we usually call them fish stories. I caught a fish that was this big. And that's goofy. But the thing is that we all have that tendency to embellish, to exaggerate, and to make ourselves look better than we actually are. We want to make everybody think that we've got it all together. That our relationships are perfectly fine parents. We want everybody to think that we're parent of the year, that our kids have it together, and we've got no issues, no worries. Everything is smooth sailing, and everything is easy going. And we work so hard, and we spend so much effort and energy, not worried about who we actually are, but worried about how we're seen by everyone around us. And so that's what I want to look at. Jesus says something very, very significant on this issue. And I want to look at that right now. If you have your Bible, open up to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. And what this section is, the section is titled The Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus takes this kind of similar line with all these different teachings. What he does is he pulls the teaching that was very common to them, And it'll say something like this. You have heard it said, and then he'll say the original teaching, but then he'll say, but I say to you. And so what had happened in this day and age is people were very good at keeping the law, very good at keeping the rules that they heard. And he goes, you have heard that it said like this, but I'm going to tell you what this is really about. Probably the most famous of the things that he said in the Sermon on the Mount is he said, you have heard it said, do not commit adultery. And he goes, but I say to you, anyone who looks at a woman with lust in his heart has already committed adultery. And so he says a lot of things like that. He goes, you're very good at keeping the rules, but this is what it's really about. And so this is what he says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 33 through 37. He says this, again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all. Now, I don't think he's talking about four-letter words or anything else you could put in there. He's talking here about the tendency we have to make ourselves seem better. In this context, it's more trustworthy. The game that we played when we were like in elementary school. Like, do you promise? Yeah, I promise. Do you promise on your lunch? Yes. I promise on my peanut butter sandwich, Fritos, and fruit snacks. Not the Capri Sun, because that's too good. But I promise if I do not do this, you can have all this. Or the other one, this was the big one when I was younger, is here we go. Do you promise on your great grandmother's grave? And I was like, yeah. I didn't even know. So I couldn't sit down. Claw her way back and come get me. Like, feeling pretty good about this one. I'm a terrible person, but that's one. So it says, but I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. And he says this, simply let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil. Simply let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil. What he's saying, in essence, is be rude. Be who you are. Now, sometimes we hear that, and like that's like a big motivational thing for high school kids. Be yourself. Like, if you're a jerk, don't be a jerk. Be better than that. But it's the tendency that we have to be so consumed and be so worried about what do they think? How do they present? What do they say about it? Do they think I've got it all together? Because I want them to think that I have it all together. Do they think that I'm a good parent? Because I really want them to think that I'm a good parent. Do they think that I'm good at my job? Because I really want that to happen. And we spend so much time and so much mental energy worried about how we're perceived. And Jesus is going, no. Just be you. Don't swear. Don't say the things to make everyone think that you're great and you've got it all together. Just be you. And I want to show you, Jesus' brother James actually says something very similar in his letter. And if I could give you a little bit of context for this. James was Jesus' brother, and he followed him around for his entire ministry. And here's the incredible thing. James was convinced that Jesus was the Son of God. Now, I assume that like all other proof that Jesus was real could just pass away because Jesus' own brother believed that he was the Son of God. Think about how much it would have taken for you to be convinced that a sibling of yours was the Christ. It would take a lot. And so what I was doing is whenever I study these things, I always kind of try to put myself in the character shoes. So I'm going through it because there's a tendency to just gloss over important information. And so I sat down and I was like, okay, if I'm in James' spot and I followed Jesus, what would I be thinking? And this was the first thought that came to my mind. I wonder if James got presents on Christmas. Because it was Jesus' birthday. So do you think Jesus got all the presents in his family? Or did they divvy it around because it was coming? And that thought wasn't helpful. But I also say this. James says this, and I love this. He says, above all, my brothers, do not swear, not by heaven, or by earth, or by anything else. Let your yes be yes, and your no, no, or you will be condemned. Do you see what he adds? He adds above all. Now, to put this in context, this is at the end of his letter. And throughout James' entire letter to the churches, he quotes Jesus' teachings. He almost kind of just picks out, these are the best things that my brother said that I really like that we should follow. And he gets to the end of his letter and he says, above all. And then he says in essence, be real. Be yourself. Be who you were created to be. Now, I mean, regardless of how much you know of the Bible, my guess is that's not what you would pick. Whether you know a little bit, whether you know all of Scripture, my guess is that is not the thing that you would pick. You would go, above all, do this. And James goes, above everything else, be real. Be yourself. And then he says at the end, or you will be condemned. Now here's something that you have to know about James. When James presents a teaching, he's very practical. He's very practical. And so what he'll do is he'll present a teaching, and then he'll usually give an immediate reward. And he'll say, do this, and this will happen. Do this, and this will happen. Believe this, and this will happen immediately. And so often when we read this, we go, or you will be condemned. We think that he's just talking in terms of heaven and hell. And he may be. But in the line of James, it's much more immediate. It's much more practical in his teaching. And so what does it mean, or you will be condemned? This is what I think he's talking about. When we present a false image of ourselves, when we present a fake version, when we present, we can say it like this, the ideal version of ourselves, the picture of ourselves, the version of ourselves that we want everyone else to believe that we are, to think that we are, so that we can do great in life, and we can get whatever we want, we could marry this person, or we can have this job, or we could just be in that group. When we present that person, what happens is we shape our future in a very negative way. This is why. It's because if you are real, if you are yourself, if you think of the future, it's very hopeful. Because it is wide open to you. You can do whatever. But if you're living in that standard of, I need to present the ideal version of myself, I can't be real, I need to present the ideal version of myself so everyone else will think that I'm just a super person. When we do that, we have to live our lives to fulfill that lie. And so if somebody else thinks that you're super parent, dad of the year, mom of the year, something like that, all of a sudden, instead of being able to be open and honest about your struggles, you have to exhaust an enormous amount of energy to get people to believe that. If people think that you've got it all together and you've got no issues, what happens is you have to live your life chasing that persona that everyone thinks that you already are. And instead of being able to look at the future and simply go, if I can do whatever, I feel free. When you look at the future, you feel crippled. Because you've got to live up to who they think you are. You've got to do all this different stuff. And the future is daunting to you. The future is gloomy when it's meant to be hopeful. All because we're trying to live up to a lie that we've created ourselves. And so this is how we're going to say it throughout this series. When you trade the real for the ideal, when you, in the present moment, trade who I am right now, struggles, faults, blemishes, difficulties, everything. When I trade that for the ideal, what's actually happening is I'm mortgaging my future for an artificial past. And this is what we think. When I make everyone else think I'm great, then they just think I'm great. And that makes me feel good because I want people to think that I've got it all together. But when what actually is happening is we're crippling our future. We're mortgaging our future. We're putting it on the line in a very unhopeful way for something that isn't even real at the present moment. Now that's not how we think. When you look at it like that, you go, why would we do that? I mean, that's stupid. Why would I be so worried about what other people think and trying to present this false, this ideal version of myself that isn't even real when that's what's actually happening? Why would I want to cripple my future for that? And I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think the number one reason, it comes down to who we're listening to. Like, if I can say it like this, when you're born, you don't have this like innate, inbred desire to like make everyone think you're the best thing in the world. You're just yourself. If I give you an example, we don't often in the morning comb our 2-year-old's hair. Partially because I think it's really funny when she gets out of bed and like this side is matted to her face and this side is out to here. And I think that's great. I want her to keep walking around like that. But my 2-year-old has no desire, has no worries about what other people think about her. And she's at the stage of life right now where her nose just runs constantly. Like, it's amazing. She has so much snot up there. I don't know how it's possible. I don't have that much snot. But her nose just constantly runs. And so that combines with the fact that we don't like to comb her hair. The other day she's walking down the hall and her hair has made its way over her lip and is just mashed against her upper lip. It gets better. She likes how it tastes. So she's walking down the hall doing this. Oh, stop that. You're like, Maddie, you are disgusting. Disgusting. And she just doesn't care. But after a while, somewhere along the way, we get this desire in us, and we get so concerned about what other people think. And so we spend great amounts of energy listening to the opinions of people who tell us that we're not good enough or we're not venturing enough. So I want to ask you just real quickly, who are you listening to? Who's telling you what value you have? And I think most of our problems, if we say it like this, come back to that. Most of our problems in terms of presenting the false image come back to who we're listening to and what they're saying about us. And that's the reason why we tell lies. That's the reason why we embellish stories. That's the reason why we go into debt. I mean, I honestly believe completely, if we all lived isolated, no one would go into debt. Because I don't realize what I need until I see what you have. And once I see it, I go, oh, that's great. I need that. If I'm really honest with myself, in terms of entertainment value, the only thing that I need in life is a bouncy ball. And if you gave me a bouncy ball, like I'm talking months of no problem. And if I could just let you know, because it happened first service, and I'm so glad that this happened second service as well, is that around the room, husbands are going, yes. And wives are looking at them going, that's you. That's it. Like, husbands, wouldn't it be great when service was done, and we just filled this room with bouncy balls? Church is over. Let's pray. We're doing that. That's so much better. I think we did that. We don't realize that we need all these other great things until we see that other people have them. And so we get all these voices in our lives telling us that we're not good enough, we're not measured up. I'm going to hit a hard one right now, and just be ready for it. I think sometimes some of the worst voices in our lives could be parents. And this is why. And if I could just be clear, if you're a teenager, I'm not talking to you right now. I'm talking to your parents. So, earmuffs, okay? You don't get a point in this out. I'm talking to people who have kids and who are kids. And I just want to warn you on this. I see so often, let me clear this. Parents, part of your job is to push your kids. Because if I'm honest with myself, if my parents didn't push me, I would still be sitting on their couch playing video games. Video games are great. Couch is very comfortable. It's fantastic. And so part of parents' job is to push their kids, to give them a nudge. But sometimes our desire for them to be the best person they could be does not come across that way. It's not communicated as, I think you're great, I think you're wonderful, I think you have tons of potential, and I want you to realize that. That's not what gets communicated. What ends up getting communicated is you're not good enough, you're not measured enough, why aren't you doing these things? Why can't you be like this person? Like, if I could say a very, very, one that's going to hit close to home. Like parents, if you get in the car with your kids after a sporting event or some other thing, and you're screaming at them, you're not the positive voice in their life. If you're their coach, maybe you get away from it. But I have seen so many kids being able to take abuse and get, all right, but I mean, grabbing his father and coach, that was not correct. All right, it's got to be over there. I have seen so many kids being able to take criticism from their coach in a very stand-up way. And then they go and get in the car with their parents and their shoulders slump. So parents, you have to be very, very careful about what you're teaching your kids about who they are and who they should be. We have to be very, very careful about who we're listening to, about who we are and who we need to be. So I want to show you real simply, I want to show you what God says about you. It's Genesis chapter 1. Leading up to this are the 5 days of creation. I'm going to start with verse 24. And what happens is God basically goes along this line. He separates the earth from the sky, and he says it's good. And he creates the sun and the moon and the stars, and he says it's good. And he creates water animals, and he creates plants, and he gets done with all these, and he goes, this is good. And then it gets to the 6th day. This is what it says. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds. Livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind, and it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, and livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground. I want you to see what's happening here because I've got one more paragraph along this line. God creates the entire world, everything in it. And then he gives it to man. He basically goes, sun, moon, stars, earth, water, sea, land, creatures. And he goes, this is for you. He continues. It says, then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the air, and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food, and it was so. And it says this, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. There was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. Okay. So if I could put this in context, God creates the sun and the moon and the stars. Sometimes when we get home at night and we're getting home late, Meg thinks the moon is the craziest thing in the world. Like, the moon, the moon, I see the moon, I see the moon, I see the moon. Great. The problem is she thinks every light in the sky when it's dark is the moon. And so we're trying to correct her on that. I see moon, 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 moon. Great, great little girl. And so, but she thinks it's amazing. She thinks stars are cool. And so sometimes, like, I'll take her out and we'll stand by her house and we'll just look up at the sky. And she's just, they're incredible. And God creates that. And he said it was good. And then God created you. And he said, this is very good. He said, this is very good. I want you to hear that. Because so many other things tell us you don't measure. You're not enough. You're not good enough. you don't have it all together. You need to be this person to be liked, to be accepted, to get this or to go there. And God created you. And He said, this is very good. The great theologian, Gwyneth Paltrow. She said it like this. It is finally when you let go of what people expect you to be and people's perceptions of you that you're able to be the version of yourself you're supposed to be in God's eyes. It doesn't matter if you're half crazy or eccentric or what it is. You have to be true to who you were born to be. Isn't that good? And so this is what we're going to say throughout this series. If I give you kind of the last thing. You will continue to present an artificial version of yourself until you believe what God says about you. You will continue to present an artificial version of yourself. You will continue to present the ideal version that you want everybody to believe instead of being real until you believe what God says about you. And we always do this right here. We go, well, if I was better, then I wouldn't worry about it. Like if I was really good, then I wouldn't worry about measuring up to anyone else. And I have this quote, and I think this is great. This is from Erin Heatherton, who the Google tells me is a supermodel. So thanks to Google. And she says this when she saw a photo spread of her from pictures that she had taken that had been photoshopped. And she goes, I never have any freckles in my pictures. I always have freckles on my face, but when I see it in the magazine, I never have freckles. She says this, I feel like it looks like someone else. I guess it's not fair. It's a bittersweet story. You look better, but it's a lie. Always go, just be this little more to this. No, it's a lie. Never be good enough. So I want you to hear this. It isn't until that moment that you go, God said, I'm very good. That doesn't mean I don't need to improve. It doesn't mean I don't need to get better. But it isn't until that moment that you just really come to grips with God said that I am very good, and that's enough. At that moment, you'll be able to be real. At that moment, you'll be able to be yourself. Because who are you impressing? You can believe all these different people and what they say about you. God created you. And so I go with what He said. Let me pray for you. Lord, I pray this morning, I pray first of all for the person who, as we've gone through this, they've thought about their friend or neighbor or daughter or parent or that other person in their life. And Lord, I pray that they would resist that thought. And that they would let this truth settle into their hearts. Lord, I want to pray for all the people who walked in here this morning who are exhausted, who are tired of trying to live up to someone else's perception of who they should be, or even the perception that they create themselves. Lord, let us come to a spot of peace. Let us come to a place of rest. We understand that you created us. You created us, and you do not make mistakes. And your voice is the voice that we should listen to. Your word is the one that we should hear. Help us to walk out of here today understanding that without any changes in our life, you still said that we are very good. And I ask that truth would settle deep into our hearts. And I pray this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
I once had to submit a photo of myself for an art contest. You know, the little bio picture that goes under a piece of artwork. And so I took a dozen or so pictures of myself and finally found one that I liked where the background was interesting but not overwhelming and where I didn't look dorky. That was real important. So when I found one that I liked, I dropped it under Photoshop and got to work. And I started fixing all the imperfections that I saw. I whitened my teeth and smoothed my hair out and took care of the dark circles under my eyes. Everything that I would fix about myself, if I had unlimited time and money in real life, I fixed on Photoshop. And when I was done, I had a nice photo, but it didn't look like me. In fact, it looked like a stranger. It really didn't look like me at all. And I realized that all those imperfections are what makes me me. I don't like the dark circles under my eyes, but I know that they got there because I've laughed so much in my life. Well, and allergies. I don't like my nose, but without it I wouldn't look like the rest of my family. And I realized I learned a lot about photography in just that 1 hour. It's fine to fix some of the small things, that's okay. But you need to let your big, glorious imperfections shine through, because that's who you are. That's how people know you. And candid photos are always the best.
That was Stephanie Stewart. She does the graphics for all our series. And so she knew the series was coming out and she was working on the graphic for it. And she sent that to me on Tuesday, word for word. And I said, I was like, oh my goodness, could we please get that on video? Because that is so good. And so she went off, and her and Lori Moore took this video. And when I finally saw it, I just replied to them. I said, that is perfect. That is fantastic. Thank you so much. And I love this. Stephanie's reply to me was, she goes, I know this is not in line with the video, but the entire time I watched it, I just kept thinking, I don't like how I'm sloping. And so this is what we're going to do. Even though we know this truth, throughout the rest of this series, we're going to talk about, even though we know this, why do we keep finding ourselves comparing over and over and over again? Why do we keep living up to who other people think we should be? And next week, I will give you why you can understand theology according to the supermarkets. But it's all we've got for today. Thank you very much for joining us. You are dismissed.